So, with Lightfall right around the corner, I decided to make one more build before everything gets changed up with their build crafting works, and that is going to be on my Void Warlock, which I have used for Insight Terminus, Birthplace of the Vile, that video is coming out this week, and I'm probably going to use it for Glassweight because it is just that good, and it's very simple and effective. It works so good, and it's like one of the most basic Void Warlock builds you can use. So, a quick word from our sponsors, and we'll get right into that. The exotic we're going to be using with today's build is going to be Contraverse Hold, which comes with the exotic perk Chaotic Exchanger. Resist incoming damage while charging your Void Grenade. Charge Void Grenades, return grenade energy on hits. This is a classic pick amongst all Warlock Void Grenade builds, as it is just extremely good for this particular setup. While charging a grenade, you gain 20% bonus to your damage resistance. Now this is huge for that high-end content where things hurt, things can one-shot you. By simply charging your grenade, you get a 20% bonus to your damage resistance. Also, when your grenades hit, you gain a 2000% additional base grenade regeneration rate for almost 2 seconds, but it does have a 4-second cooldown. But with this, charged vortex grenades can proc twice if an enemy gets hit by the initial explosion and the last few ticks of the grenade damage, which means we will definitely be using vortex grenades, and with our class setup, they'll be able to last a little longer, which means you might be able to get a little bit more out of Contraverse Holds, as long as, things don't die immediately. So, let's go over our class setup explaining that. The first aspect we're going to look at is Feed the Void. Defeat a target with a Void ability to activate Devour. While Devour is active, final blows restore health and extend Devour. We'll be getting a bunch of Void ability final blows due to the amount of grenades we'll be throwing with this build, which in turn will give us Devour for just a large amount of period for whatever activity you're running, whether that be a Grandmaster, a raid, a strike. The amount of grenades we'll throw will basically just mean you'll almost always have Devour as long as there are things to kill, which is great. That's going to keep you alive because Devour is going to constantly be giving you your health back. The other aspect we're going to look at is Chaos Accelerant. Hold to overcharge your grenade, making it deadlier and more effective. And for our Vortex grenades, that's going to increase the size and add a lingering duration of the Vortex. With the increased size and duration of our Vortex grenades, this will allow Contraverse Hold to have the potential to get more grenade energy back from its exotic perk, if anything stays alive that long, because these grenades are extremely potent in basically anything. During my Birthplace of the Vile run in the final boss room, I would just hold a grenade, throw it on where the Scorn will spawn on the left or right hand side, and it will just annihilate that entire wave. I will get Devour, I won't even be close to dying, and I'll be ready for that next wave that's about to spawn with that additional increase to our regeneration rate. It was very good. I'll explain that when I go over the Birthplace of the Vile stuff on Tuesday, but with those two aspects alone, we're going to add a lot of survivability to this build, and our grenades are going to have that added effectiveness, making them that much better paired with our exotic. As for fragments, we're going to take a look at Echo of Undermining. Your Void grenades weaken targets, but it gives you a -20 to discipline. Now this fragment hits your grenade stat extremely hard for its weakening effect that it can give out, but with our exotic giving us that massive boost to grenade regeneration, it's not felt so much at the middle tiers of our discipline stat. As long as you can get to 60 after the hit from Undermining, you'll be more than fine. So get to 80, apply Undermining, and you'll be more than okay. If you pair this alongside any Demolitionist weapon, you basically almost entirely negate the effect of this -20 discipline between Contraverse Hold and Demolitionist. So it's a very good thing to have, especially for this build, because that weaken effect is great when you just throw it on a champion. The next thing we're going to look at is Echo of Remnants. Your lingering grenade effects, Vortex, Void Wall, Void Spike, and Axion Bolt have increased duration. This paired with Chaos Accelerant will give our Vortex grenades a ton of uptime, giving Contraverse Hold more time to get its perk off, and will allow the weaken effect from Undermining the ability to last longer on those high health targets like bosses and champions. And finally, we're going to look at Echo of Expulsion. Void ability final blows cause the targets to explode with a +10 to your intellect. I took this solely for the purpose of the additional ad clear for the enemies that don't get pulled into your Vortex grenade, and it worked out very well for that purpose. Also, the extra intellect from this particular fragment is also very nice as well. If you feel like you don't need this or Remnants, I highly recommend exchanging one of them for Echo of Persistence, because that will allow your Devour to last longer, meaning you have more time between your next grenade throw for your Devour to activate. And of course, getting weapon kills will extend your Devour as well. There are a lot of things here that we can use to extend that Devour and make our grenades just hit a little bit harder and last longer for Contraverse Hold to do its thing. This is all supported by our armor setup that we're obviously going to go over right now. Now, the armor section in this video is extremely simplified down to just the combat style mods and a few extra mods that I used here and there. So let's get started with our helmet. I ran Ashes to Assets since this is a very grenade heavy build. It only makes sense to run this mod to grant us a bunch of super energy back for simply defeating enemies with our grenade, which again is the whole point of this build. Being able to throw a grenade into a crowd of enemies, get a bunch of kills, feed back into our super, repeat the process. It's a very simplistic loop. We also are going to run Elemental Ordnance. Our grenades will be thrown out so frequently, we may as well use them to make us some Elemental Wells in the process in order to feed back into our abilities via the way that Elemental Wells just work by standard, as well as a few other mods that we're going to use later on in this build when we go over the armor section. For our arms, we're going to run Bountiful Wells. Our grenades will now make us 2 Elemental Wells when we defeat something with them, granting us more ability energy from just simply the way that Elemental Wells work. Again, when getting an Elemental Well that matches your subclass type, you feed all of your abilities back with it. So with one grenade, we can now get 2 Elemental Wells, which are now going to feed back into our other abilities twice, technically 1 for each of the Elemental Wells we create. For our chest, we're going to run Font of Wisdom. Anytime we pick up one of those Elemental Wells, our intellect stat will be boosted to 100. This paired with Ashes to Assets means we will get our super back extremely fast, which will be very helpful in many situations no matter what content you are playing. For our legs, we're going to run Seeking Wells. In high-end content, the idea of putting yourself out of cover for a simple elemental well is a bad idea to me. So with this, we can make it a little easier as we can make them come to us. Now again, this isn't perfect. They do get stuck on rocks and walls and all that other stuff, so keep that in mind. For our bond, I ran Weaken Clear. I used this mostly because I was running Truth Teller Grenade Launcher, so I was able to apply a Weaken effect before charging and tossing my Vortex Grenade, allowing my Vortex Grenade to do more damage on the initial hit, and then of course Undermining takes over after Weaken Clear is gone, and it'll just do all the rest of the damage that it needs to do. Again, just very helpful for that upfront weaken so you can get the additional damage from your initial grenade impact. I also ran Well of Tenacity. With the absurd amount of Void Wells we'll be making, we will take advantage of them by giving us the additional damage resistance that Tenacity gives us, allowing us to stay alive longer, impaired with our Devour, our higher resilience, and our ability to gain that 20% from holding our grenades with Contraverse Hold. Another thing I used quite often with this build, especially depending on champions, was Lord Kelvin's Basilisk. With this setup, the ability to overload champions with grenades makes them extremely easy to deal with, especially with Undermining, because now they are stunned, they take the additional damage from the grenade and Undermining, toss a Weaken Clear in there, you know, it's just going to chew through those overload champions extremely quickly. And again, that's the whole reason I want to bring this into Glassway, so that this way I can throw a Vortex Grenade on one of the doors, have the Overload Minotaur walk into it, get stunned, and get absolutely chewed apart by the grenade and my teammates at the same time. So hopefully that'll all work out very well. When my Glassway video comes out, obviously you'll see which build I use. I haven't ran it yet. I really need to. I think I'm going to focus on getting my last 3 Grandmasters done this week, so this way I can prepare the videos for them before Lightfall, obviously, and get those out as well. Speaking of Lightfall, this is also the end of this particular video. Now, with Lightfall coming around the corner, I don't know how many more build videos I'm going to do for this current season. There's a lot of things that I'm looking forward to in Lightfall. I mentioned that in my last video. So I really want to start focusing on builds that are going to be useful in Lightfall, like my Solar Warlock, my Stasis Hunter, and I'm still undecided on my Titan. I want to do a Void Titan just so I can round out the elemental spectrum. But I also want to do a Solar Titan because you can throw your hammer to become Radiant. You can use the new Judgment of Kel'Garath glaive to then pop barrier champions with Synthoceps, so it's all very interesting to me. That idea has been bouncing around in my head for a while since they made the change to glaives and Synthoceps at the beginning of the season, and now that we can become Radiant and deal with barrier champions, the idea of that is just so very enticing, but I might save that for after Lightfall when I can test it and see how it runs. But that is the end of the video. So I hope everybody enjoyed. They can use this in their future runs, and I hope everybody has a good week.